Celebration is his life by taking refuge in the three jewels of the Buddha, the awakened one, awakened heart, and Dharma teaching, and Sangha community. I go for refuge to the Buddha.
I go for refuge to the Buddha.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
I will cultivate a heart of enlightenment.
And realize the great way.
And realize the great way.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
I go for refuge to the Dharma.
And resolve with all beings.
And resolve with all beings.
I will penetrate the teachings.
I will penetrate the teachings
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
and uncover oceans of wisdom.
I go for refuge to the Sangha
I go for refuge to the Sangha
and resolve with all beings.
and resolve with all beings.
I will seek great peace and harmony for the many
I will seek great peace and harmony for the many
and transform this world into Buddha land unimpeded.
and transform this world into Buddha land unimpeded.
Please be seated. So, Sunim would say, take a right place. So take a seat. So I'd like to welcome all of you, each of you. Some of you have not seen a while. Makes me cry seeing you. So we are here to remember our teacher Sunim's life. With a great, infinite gratitude. So there's some very simple verses I like to say with you together. So you can close your eyes and picture Sunim in your mind and heart. And then say it out loud. Sunim, remember you warmly and with all of our hearts.
Sunim, remember you warmly and with all our hearts.
Louder. Sunim, remember you warmly with all of our hearts. Sunim, we are gathered for this special service for you.
Sunim, we are gathered for this special service for you.
On the strength of your goodness and your many good qualities in this lifetime.
On the strength of your goodness and your many good qualities in this lifetime.
And on the strength of your original goodness.
And on the strength of your original goodness.
We praise you.
We praise you.
We honor you.
We honor you.
We remember you.
We remember you.
there is a small writing called The Human Root. Sunim wrote, in the occasion of a memorial service or funeral service. So this human life, human root. Coming empty-handed. Going empty-handed. That is human. When you are born, where do you come from? When you die, where do you go? Life is like flowing cloud which appears. Death is like a flowing cloud which disappears. The flowing cloud itself originally does not exist. Life and death, coming and going, are also like that. But there is one thing which always remains clear. It is pure and clear, not depending on life and death. Then, what is the one pure and clear thing? What is the one pure and clear thing? So, what is that? So, let's see. Just briefly, about Sunim's life. So Sunim was born as Samu Sunim. Actually, it's not correct. Sam Kim in Korea, Jinju, South Korea. He entered the monastery when he was 17. Eventually ordained 62 at Formosa Monastery in Busan, South Korea. And he left his home country pretty young, just only 27, 1967. Came to New York City, from there Montreal, from there Toronto. A lot of things happened this several years of his life. So eventually, he made a vow to dedicate his life to bringing Buddhism to North America, Canada, US, and Mexico. I'm just going to maybe share just a little bit. I found this little book, 1973. Little diary. This is a very difficult time for Sunim, 1973. his marriage broke down. He was alone in Toronto. So this was a little journal, December 4th, 1973, Tuesday, Toronto, cloud and rain. Find it harder to walk at night. Mailbags are heavy, and the tendon in my left armpit hurts continuously. Had cold sweat in sleep the last few days on end. Taught Korean and Hanmun, Chinese, and took 11:30 night train to Ottawa to attend something. And especially I know here people maybe experience hardship, coming to a new country, learning the language, trying to get a job, raise a family. Did he try that actually? And failed. And so the 73 December, the winter, Sunim fell ill. He had a TB. And after this time, basically he decided to go back to his monk life and did a 3-year retreat and slowly gather people interested in meditation and Buddhism. So there was Malcolm Street, a town hall in Toronto in the 70s. Eventually, that meditation group became this temple, Toronto Temple, 1980. And then from there, he was a pioneer, so he doesn't want to settle comfortably at one place. So he had to move. So went to Michigan, Ann Arbor, then Mexico City, in Chicago, later New York City. Yeah. So we have a few temples, 7 sanghas, we call Springing Sangha. Maybe just Sunim's, let's say, characters. I would say just with one thing, it was strong, very determined, dedicated, very frugal, maybe too frugal. And really worked tirelessly, given the situation. So thanks to him, we are all here. So actually, our first speaker would be Sujata, and running late. She's coming. She's here.
Right there.
Yeah. Okay. We have a seat for you. Sorry. Okay. So then let me introduce very special person.
Yeah.
It's my honor. Very, very special person. I don't think Sunim would make this without the help of first maybe 25 years of his work. He would. Sujata was the editor of our very famous magazines, including old ones. She was the editor and also general secretary of our Buddhist society. And teacher was also, she was also a priest, worked at the temple. So, thank you. Well, I'm so happy to have her right here. Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. I'm just getting over a cold, so maybe you will allow me to take this off so I can speak. Yes. But if it's this, a drop of water, how can you consume it? A beam of light, how can you waste it without awakening to the vows of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to enlighten all beings? Sunim had me write this, and it was in the bathroom for a long time, just to remind us not to waste water or anything like that. I think it was replaced by another one, that's why I still have this one. But that was his strong, strong teaching. As you heard, I don't know how much you want me to say. I really struggled hard to think what to say because there is so much to say about Sunim. You heard he was born and he was an orphan at a very young age, and he was left homeless. And he told me when that happened that there were thieves. There were lots of homeless boys. There were thieves and there were shushan boys. And he said even though he was homeless, and he lived in shushan boys, and he earned his keep by teaching them how to read and write. Because at the age of 9, he knew how to read and write very, very well because his parents were educated people. But that city orphanage for the shushan boys closed and he was on the street again. And if you're a child and homeless, you learn how to survive or you don't make it. And he was very intense, Sunim was, because he had that early experience. And it happened, you know the story about the blind turtle in the wide ocean coming across the floating piece of how rare it is to come across a piece of floating wood that it can lay its head on. That's how rare it is to come across the Dharma. It happened, he came across a Buddhist temple and asked, building is that? How can I live there? He was told you have to be a monk to live there. And so he became a boy novice and then a junior monk and then an ordained fully monk at age 21. And then he did a 5-year Dutanga. He told me this because I wrote it in one issue of many, many years ago, Spring Wind. And he traveled around Korea on foot to different masters and different temples. And then he began to study Hwadu with his great master, Samu Sunim, whose dates are 1890 to 1969. That accuracy comes from Sunim. He did his Hwadu practice, and he was recognized by Master Solong as having attained realization, and he received this style name Sokwa, stone flower. But in the 1960s, it became the law in South Korea that all young men, whether you were a monk or not, you had to go into the army or into the military. And so he was taken up into the military. And he didn't want to do that, so he left the country. And he told me that story, but I don't know, he didn't want really everybody to know about it, but he escaped really with the help of people. He was put under the deck of a fishing boat, and he was sailing across the sea to Japan, and the water, it was a leaky little boat, and the water kept going up and up and up, and he thought he would be drowned before he got to the other side. But he did get to Japan, and he went to a Rinzai monastery, and he did the great sesshin there. He told me which monastery it was, but I don't remember now. It might have been Sogenji, I don't remember. But he was in Japan, and then some friends helped him come to North America. They got him a plane ticket, and I think he came on a visitor's visa to New York City. And he first went to a Japanese monastery there. I think there was no room for him. So he went, and he found it was the 60s, and there was people around who said, come stay at my place. So he did. And that's how he began the Zen Lotus Society in New York City. He was a monk, and he did what monks did. He put up posters, he tried to teach meditation and began the Zen Lotus Society in that way. Then he went to Montreal. He came up to Montreal in February of 1968 and landed there. He married. I met him actually in 1968. I was a student taking religious studies at McGill University, and our professor said, "You must go, there's a real Zen monk, to do a Zen meditation." So I did, and he was fierce. He was like a tiger. The energy in there, I was terrified. And when it ended, I didn't go back. So, as Sangha says, life was very hard for him. He really studied hard. He tried to learn English. He tried to learn French. He progressed. He studied assiduously English and French. And he became fluent in the language. But life was very difficult for him. As Sangha says, in Montreal, there was an attempt to have a piece of rented land, but that didn't work out. And eventually he moved with his family to Toronto, to that little basement apartment on Markham Street. And then his marriage ended, they parted ways, and Sunim became quite ill. He became ill, had a long convalescence, and then did his own personal retreat. And in his own personal retreat, the spirit of his master came to him. And this is a recognized thing in Korean Buddhism. As Sangha says, when some Korean Bosonians discovered him in the basement apartment, lovely, wonderful people, came and he did Sunday service for him, and they cooked him meals, vegetarian food that they left for him that he ate during the week, and he gathered some people around him. And it was like in the mid-70s, and there were artists, musicians, students, very creative people of all kinds showed up in his basement, mental patients, all kinds of people showed up in his basement apartment, and he taught everybody meditation. And there was one very, very devout student, Audrey Kitson. She went to Korea and then ordained as Samu Sunim. She made many, many meditation mats, and so there was a little basement apartment on Markham Street that became a temple. And somebody who had architectural training designed one end of it to be a temple. And it was very simple. It was 2 pieces of 4x8 plywood put together that went from floor to ceiling with a big circle cut out. And then that showcased an altar that had a Buddha statue, very simple candlesticks, a water offering bowl, a rice bowl, and some trays for fruits. And that was a simple but very effective temple. And when I took that, I saw a poster, one of those handmade posters put up in 1978, and I went to the temple and took the beginner's course. And at that time, he showed you how to take off your shoes and put them with the toes pointing out, because he said, coming and going, and pay attention to small details. And then we went and you washed your feet, and then you went and he showed you how to sit. And our beginner's course of 4 people, I was one of 4, was mostly all sitting. And then after, he courteously, sometimes would offer us this barley tea that he had going on the stove. And then sometimes we would go for a walk afterwards, like into Chinatown or down and around. There were many people around at that time. I don't know if I can remember them all. If I start to give names and omit some names, please forgive me. Doheng was around at that time. Suka Sambo was around. Audrey Kitson, Patsy, Bill, Paul Hogan, I think. Many talented people were around at that time. And there was a Buddha's birthday celebration in one of the rented houses at St. Clarence. And it was a big success. It was a wonderful kind of experience. And it was all fueled by Sunim's energy, because he was very, very dynamic. He was a presence. When he was in the room, you looked at him. That's just how it was. And I'm gonna have to get my water. Excuse me. Please forgive me. I had a cold all week, but I didn't want to miss this.
Do you want a seat?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So his teaching was coming and going is the same. Pay attention. Do small things carefully. Don't be sloppy. So it happened, as Sana said, that the Korean Posenan saved some money, and a property was found to be the first temple in Toronto. It had to be big, and it had to be cheap. And so you only find big and cheap in a kind of a rundown, slummy kind of area, and that's what it was at the time. So we bought this old, rundown, former rooming house in the Parkdale area, which was pretty rough at the time, and began to renovate it. It's famously had 75 work orders against it. And Suka moved in, Sandal moved in, Garima was there. Other people were Bonnie and Janice, John David from North Carolina, Jose Luis from Mexico, Tommaso from Montreal, and a few others. And I moved in late in 1979. We actually worked from morning to night, either working on the building or working at jobs to bring some money in. Richard, Supa, Dayaka, Kondana, Sinke, Anisha, and Jali were there, and the Sangha began to grow. And Sunim always went around after the work checking to see that if there was anything useful, because nothing that was useful should be thrown out. So we would pick up small pieces of wood and collect them up to make a bonfire in the yard we still didn't have heat in the house. He also filled many, many, many buckets with broken plaster to be taken away. The day started with the bell chant, and I remember one particular time, different people did the bell chant, but the Suka went up and down the stairs one time with that ringing the handbell. And one time Suka rang the handbell so vigorously that the ceiling over the stairs fell in. It fell in with the most tremendous crash. And then there were huge billows of plaster dust, and they came out of the windows and out of the doors, and the neighbors came running to see. They thought that the building had fallen in. That's Suka. But his other teaching was that every day is a wonderful day. Doesn't matter what it is, every day is a wonderful day. So in the evening after work, we would sit around at this big, kind of low but long coffee table, and we would drink a beer and have roasted peanuts in the shell. Sunim also liked dried squid with Korean hot sauce, and sometimes we sang. And Sunim had a wonderful voice, and he particularly had one song called "Oh Danny Boy," and he would sing it out. And we really, really enjoyed those times. He had a wonderful singing voice, and as we sat there every evening, he would begin to tell these incomprehensible stories designed for each one of us. And they were, you looked at him and you were listening to the words, but you did not quite know what they meant. He told one story about somebody who collected their tears preciously. He told another story about somebody's cousin who was in yeshiva. He was incredibly creative, and he made these stories, they were teaching stories for each of us, because we had really a special relationship with him at that time. And it was a wonderful time, I have to say, it was a wonderful time. There were many friends who came around. Bob and Maria, who ran Jubilation Bakery, a kind of an underground bakery, would come, and they would bring us boxes and boxes of cookies and things. There was George, the eccentric organic farmer, who came and he brought us boxes of offcuts of bread from bakeries, and he brought us sunchokes that grew abundantly on his land, And Suka would shop at these discount stores on Queen Street and put together wonderful vegetarian meals. And she would make muffins in a toaster oven. And the muffins would kind of collapse. They wouldn't have that nice top, but it was perfect to put organic peanut butter in. And so we really enjoyed those things. It was a really wonderful time. And during that first week, we would pile into the van and go places sometimes, camping. And we went one time to the powwow at the Grand River and had a dance. Sunim had a feeling for the First Nations people, and he felt that they were very poorly treated. And he felt that they were the true custodians of this land. And so we would go there to pay homage to them. And we went particularly to Polly Johnson's house to do prostrations there. And people would look at us and wonder what we were doing. But after the powwow, which was wonderful, and we danced, Sunim too, we picked up garbage after that as kind of our payment for that experience. It was spontaneous. It happened that way. We also went to the powwow at Lewiston, New York. Also, I had a wonderful experience there too. So every day was a wonderful day. It didn't matter that it was cold or work was hard or sometimes, you didn't have the best variety of food, but it was delicious anyway. Every day was a wonderful day. And Sunim would come along and say things like, "Pali Pali, hurry up, hurry up." He would sometimes just confront you with a shout, and it would jar you up and energize you. So after we finished, basically the songban was finished first, and he encouraged people to work with their hands. And Samu, who had been a university professor, became a very, very good carpenter. And he made this beautiful floor in the songban out of 3/4-inch tongue groove pine, that had that kind of gray streaking in it that was very nice. And but it's here east and west. The Korean ladies would come for the songban and for the services in the songban, and they wanted a carpet. And so that beautiful floor was covered up with broadwood because it was the service was so important for them. It was so important that they be comfortable and enjoy it. And that's one thing I remember. Another teaching, it was be careful, pay attention, watch under your step. The right person makes the wrong thing right. These were some of his teachings that he sort of put in there. So work progressed, and Samuel, an extremely capable person, was sent to Ann Arbor to found a new temple there. And that was the next step of development of the Zen Buddhist temple. And the building that was eventually found there was a very large and fine house with some property around it. And that allowed for a 2-month or a 3-month retreat to be able to be held there. And in 1982, I believe that was the first year that there was a full retreat. And there were many, many wonderful people that were there. And I'm sure Suka will tell us all about it, because there's too many for me to remember and to mention. Kumara, the wonderful gardener, Risham, Yoshim, so many people who were Jeanette Shepherd, Padma, so many people who were there. And the first summer training was uplifting, even though it was physically draining. It was a wonderful time. After some time, Sambal and then Mushim, she was a talented poet and writer, she left. And others too left from the Toronto temple. People came and went. Sunim said that it was an open-ended training. You're not expected to stay forever. Sunim was the first teacher for many, many people, many extraordinary people who went on to become monks or spiritual teachers in their own right in different organizations or for themselves. And Sunim was always glad to hear that people were continuing their practice, whether it was in an ecological way or a formal way or an artistic way. It was always, it's like where they were supposed to go. That's how I look at it. And another teaching of Sunim was just do it. Just do it. About it. Just do it. And we started Spring Wind. And an example of that is he said, we should have a newsletter. And so I said, oh, yeah, okay, a broadsheet, 2 sheets, news of the Sangha, yeah. He said, no, it's got to be a periodical. Okay, maybe 25, 30 pages. No, 100 pages. And I said, you're going to write? No, we get scholars. We get people to write it. Yes, okay. And then I said, and we are going to get money and support for this? No, we'll do it ourselves. Just do it. And so that's how it started. Every issue got bigger and bigger. And by chance, I found this thing. I have 1 or 2 copies of the Old Spring Winds, and this was a letter that was sent out. And he said that he realized that it was duty as a teacher to ensure that Western Buddhist students do not inherit sectarian teachings from us Asian teachers who might have brought them with us, but to learn from the best traditions of Buddhism for the future of Buddhism in the West. So the Spring Wind was to be an ecumenical Buddhist journal. It was to cover a wide variety of issues, a wide variety of traditions, and I believe it did in the years that we published it. And that was before the days of the internet, before the days of, a million photographs of every single thing, before the days of instant news everywhere. Buddhist groups were like silos. They were existing, but they didn't have too much connection with each other. And so he decided to put out this publication. And some of the people involved in that were Chris Bright, Mani and Anshim, Mushim, Supa, Kondana, Tony Uman, Sarah Sheard. Forgive me if I miss out people. And some of the scholars they got were truly distinguished scholars. Leonard Priestley, David Waterhouse, Richard Hayes, Peter Timmerman, Wayne Schlepp, to contribute and to move along this publication. He also started a spring and summer lecture series. He called it the Buddhist Institute of Canada because he felt it had to have a nice name. And some of these excellent scholars gave lectures for the public. People would come to the temple and hear, a university professor give a lecture, Dieter Misgeld, give a lecture on some important topic. And they were very, very interesting. We also became a member of the Buddhist Council of Canada at that time, which was an organization in Toronto, and we took part in things that they did, including the first celebration of Wesak at City Hall. And Sunim was very interested in Buddhism in North America. He wanted to document it at the beginning. And so he took members. We visited the Dr. Ambedkar Society. We visited Chinese temples, Vietnamese temples, Laotian temples, Sri Lankan temples when they had special things going on to educate ourselves of how broad a tradition is encompassed in Buddhism. And around this time, Mani and Anshim invited Sunim to Mexico, and that's how the Mexican Sangha began. And Joanne will tell you about that as well. I went down to Mexico for a retreat in December of 1984, and it was held in the amazing countryside, amazing. And after that retreat, Sunim went to Los Angeles, and Mushim and I, a Mexican member, lent us a VW bug, and we drove to Los Angeles. And with Sunim, we visited all kinds of temples in the LA, San Francisco area, Denver area, Chicago, and then back to Ann Arbor. And in San Francisco, we went to visit the Jodo Shinshu Temple, Buddhist Churches of America. Upstairs to the roof, where they had a stupa which contains relics of Buddha and Moggallana that were given to them by the royal Thai court. And it's amazing how Sunim knew all of this stuff. He, he knew all this stuff before we were there, and that's why we were invited to those things. He knew so much about the Buddhist traditions in different places that I'm amazed. I'm still amazed at them. Anyway, we did that trip, and we also did trips to Buddhist temples on the East Coast and on to in Canada. And Sunim had it documented in Spring Wind, and now it's 40 years since those original trips. And I think those records can serve as a kind of documents for scholars in the future, should they be interested in knowing about those things. Anyway, Sunim was very earthy, very intense, very strong. He had a very, very, very steady mind, and he was extremely knowledgeable of Buddhism. He knew Chinese characters, he knew Buddhist Sanskrit, he understood English very well, and he often said he could have been a writer, or he could have written a lot, but he had no time for that. And the few things that I saw that he had written, he really could have been an excellent writer. But to do all those things, you had to be extremely frugal. Had to not waste anything, not waste a drop if possible. Suka was excellent. She was such a good example of how not to waste things and how to do it gracefully. Sunim often told us the story of a Zen Master. I don't remember his name, but a real Zen Master at a temple after the Korean War. And his temple was in ruins, very, very little things and very little supplies. And there's something called spring starvation. That's when the last of the last year's food is eaten, and then the spring food isn't ready yet. The spring greens aren't up yet. And people suffered from that spring starvation. And he kept the miso and the soy sauce behind his back, this master, in the meditation hall. So when any kind of food had to be prepared, people had to come to him to ask him for some miso and some soy sauce. And he made very, very sure that they really needed it. And he always gave them just a little bit less than what he thought they needed. And that's another teaching story. So it's amazing. He was a bridge between that long tradition, vital tradition of Korean Zen and the present day. And he had the training, and he was able to convey it in a Western way, in a way that Westerners could take in. His teaching always was, all beings are inherently Buddha. Help yourself through spiritual training and make a vow to help others. It's right from the early 80s to start a Buddhist seminary to train Canadian Americans to be Dharma teachers and priests. He felt strongly that if Buddhism was to thrive in North America, it had to take North American forms. And interesting, in 1982, he made his first trip back to Korea with Suka and 2 other students. And in a piece that he wrote much later in 1989, he stated that he understood the conflict between monastic values and those of the householder. And that he tried to bridge the gap between monastic authoritarianism and secular humanism. He felt that this is him writing, he felt that he almost became westernized in his outlook and way of thinking. He wrote that when he went to Korea in 1982, after being away for 17 years, he realized that his Buddhist outlook had been tempered by Western ideas, and he believed this was a good thing. He felt that Korean Buddhism was very formalistic and authoritarian, but beneath that formalistic shell, the spiritual content was pure and true to the original spirit. So he noted that even though he himself had moved away from the traditional authoritarianism of Korean Buddhism, he noted that he himself was still very much criticized by his Western students, myself included, authoritarian. Thankless job, teacher. But, Ann Arbor Temple has been developing Western forms like baby naming ceremonies and the Buddhist peace camp and eco-Buddhism, which is a wonderful, and I think that that's a direction that he would highly endorse. So I'm talking about a period that I know about, and others will tell you more after. But by 1988, the Temple Sangha had grown. The Toronto Temple Sangha had grown. We had outgrown that house on Green Avenue. We were bursting at the seams. We were trying to have art shows and lectures there and festivals there, and there wasn't enough room for people who wanted to sit. And so we found this place in 1988 and relocated here. And it was a former Jewish synagogue, which had been, that congregation had moved on, and this building had really fallen into disrepair. And it was a lot of physical work in trying circumstances. Doan, Me, Doheng, Anjali, Anicha, Achala, Asla Bava from Ann Arbor, Chibo, many people worked on this building. And we had to suspend the publication of Spring Wind during that time. Because this was before internet self-publishing. This is when we printed it ourselves and guillotined it and collated it and stapled it and everything ourselves. We went to Coach House Press. They were so kind to us at Coach House Press. They let us do the bookbinding there. And it was very, a nice thing. So let's see. There was a lot of work going on here, but nevertheless, Sunim still wanted to organize things for Western Buddhism. And one of the things that he organized was the North American Second Generation Zen Teachers Conference. I think that was in 1986. And that was when Asian teachers had been authorizing Western students, their Western students, to teach. And there were a number of them. And he felt that would be a good thing for these North American teachers to get together. And so he organized this, and so it was his idea. I know that now, I looked at it yesterday, American Zen Teachers Association. They talk about how it suddenly arose at the end of 1987. It was Sunim who did it. He got on the phone and called everybody, called San Francisco, called Rochester, called Providence Zen Center, called everybody and got them together to come to Ann Arbor for a week. And also got really distinguished scholars, Luis Gomez, Daniel Lo, Richard Hayes, to do a kind of scholarly part to that, as well as the Zen practice part. And it was a wonderful conference. And at the end, there was a promise by San Francisco Zen Center to hold it again next year, and then it continued on ever after that. He worked very hard. He would come in and say, "We're having a conference." And my usual self was, "Oh yes, well, no, 7 days. Oh, okay, this maybe a local. No, everybody." It was always like that. And he would amazingly organize and make these things happen. I think that I'm giving you my personal opinion, because he had the early experience that he had of being homeless and having to survive. He would look at you and find out what you're good at and then ask you to do it. You're good at cooking. Oh, great. You're going to cook for a week. And some people say, yeah. Other people say, no. But it worked. It worked. So there was the World Buddhism Conference in Ann Arbor, huge event. Here there was a day of celebration for the Dalai Lama, who was nominated in 1989-90 for the Peace Prize. And I worked closely with Sunim on all of these events because I could type. And so I was using a computer, and we would develop all these schedules of events and things that to go on, and amazingly, one after another, they actually occurred. This takes a tremendous amount of energy, a tremendous amount of acumen, a tremendous amount of organizational ability to pull something like this off. And I am amazed actually that by this wonderful person. He was so committed to bringing Buddhism to Westerners that he worked nonstop for the years that I was at the temple from 79 to 94. But as much as he wanted to do things for North American Buddhism, his primary, for Buddhism in general, his primary goal was to found temples or Zen communities for Westerners to have access to Buddhist teaching and meditation. He gave precepts to hundreds of people, maybe thousands, I don't know. And in the end, I think that will be his main work. Founding temples, giving precepts so people encounter the Dharma. What you do with it is on you. But if you can encounter the Dharma, that's a good thing. So this is where my participation with the Zen Buddhist Temple ended, and my work with Sunim ended, or his work with me ended. But others can continue the story because Sunim spent 30 more years planting Dharma seeds. And his teaching was, be awake each moment. Do not waste your life. And I do not believe that he wasted a single moment of his life. And the Buddhist Society of Compassionate Wisdom for many years had an exceptional guide, an exceptional master, and now he's left it to be continued by. Thank you. So we prepared some photo slideshow. So doesn't describe much, but you will see the year and location. There's no photo of Sunim before with the 7th page. So it began at the scene already in Toronto. And up to the day after Sunim's passing. So it will be projected on the wall. And as a background, the soundtrack is a jazz instrument. The Sunim was very creative, so Sunim kind of invented this chant, Ma'um. Ma'um means clear, means heart and mind. So the people can just chant for peace of mind, to relax and to gain the peace of mind. So you hear the tune, it's a variation. We can just hum along. It's like
By the virtue collected through all that I have done, may the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine. May I be the nurse for the sick things in the world until everyone is healed. May a rain of food and drink descend to clear away the pain of the thirst. And may I myself change and drink. May I become an inexhaustible treasure for those who are poor and destitute. May I turn into all the things they need and may these be placed close beside them. Whether those who encounter me conceive a faithful or angry thought, may they always become the source for fulfilling all their wishes. May all who say bad things to me or cause me other harm, and those who mock and insult me have the fortune to awaken fully. May I be a savior of those without one, a guide for all travelers on the way. May I be a bridge, a boat, and a ship for all who wish to cross the world. May I be an island for those who seek one, and a lamp for those desiring light. May I be a bed for all who wish to rest. May I be a wishing jewel, a native vase, powerful mantras, and great medicine. May I be a wishing jewel, just like space and the great elements such as earth. May I always support the life of all the countless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of their little beings that reach unto the ends of the space. Just as the previous Bodhisattvas conceived the spirit of enlightenment, and just as they successfully lived in the Bodhisattva practice, likewise, for the sake of all their lives, I conceive the spirit of enlightenment, and likewise shall I too successfully follow the practice.
Pause and we'll have to speak and then we'll continue. It's overheated now, so now we are going to have Samu Sunim. You all know. Thank you so much for all the background information and stories which you gave to us, and for your strong participation in it. I think Sunim and you did a good job together, along with the rest of us. It's really nice being here with you today, and I hope that what you just offered us is something that can be part of a general book about Sunim's work, because there's so many stories, wonderful ones. There are. Good to see you. Thank you. And everybody else. It's really good to see you. Brings tears also to my eyes. I'm Haju, the Sukha one, got renamed at a certain time. And generally have been in Ann Arbor. So let me see if I can pick up from where Sujata left us. And I think, let me see, that instead of doing some talk about all the big accomplishments that Sunim did, like building temples and starting publications and training so many people to take the precepts, etc., I decided from my 42 or 4 years of knowing him, it's really hard to tell that story. We would be here for a few hours. Let me pick 2 or maybe 5 little incidents which were particularly touching to me, you know, in the time that Sunim and I were together. Okay, so first of all, I always do my crazy things. I have to sing this song. It's one of my favorite songs, and it was in the the human root, really, that Sanha read to us before. So for Sunim, no coming, no going, no after, no before. I hold you close to me. I release you to be so free. Because I am in you and you are in me. Because I am in you and you are in me. I say, and my two daughters say, you wouldn't be the same if you hadn't met Sunim, Mom. So I really am who I am because of all the time, not right with him, but just in the whole, what Sujata painted, this wonderful Dharma realm. Yeah. Okay, so some little stories. Okay, this is a Toronto Clarence Street story. A retreat in the kitchen, 4 a.m. There's just a light hanging over the stove. Sunim has a big gold kettle, which he's been boiling and it's steaming. You can imagine that early in the morning, it was, I think, at the end of winter time. And he handed us these small teacups, which were rough in the inside. And he handed us spoons. And he came around with a vat, which had some umabashi plums in it. And he plopped one plum in each of our cups. And then he came around very carefully. If you go to Korea, you'll see these kind of big teapots a lot. And he filled our cups with hot water. And he said, this umabashi plum is so good for you. You know, you stir it, really give it a good stir, and then drink it down, and you'll have a lot of energy for this retreat. What I remember was all of us sitting there, and there weren't many of us, maybe there were 5, on the floor, the steaming, stirring these umabashi plums. And because of the roughness of the tea cup, I still remember, maybe there's something that you still remember, the sound. And then with 2 hands, drinking the umabashi tea. And not sure if we got any more energy from it, but it was a really kind of wonderful way to start the day. Small incident number 1. Now, small incident number 2. Ontario countryside, retreat for artists. We were going to go to, I think, a Boy Scout camp, and I'm not sure exactly where it was. And Sunim invited all artists, you know, to come, which meant there was about 7 of us, 8 of us, because we were a small group then. And he said, you just bring along what, you know, you're working on for your art. So my husband brought along, he's trying to learn to play the guitar. So all that retreat, we heard this guy clunking away on the guitar. And there was somebody who said, well, I haven't got much that I can do. I'm not an artist. And Sunim said, well, carve soap. And so we had soap carving going on. And there were some other things too. And he said, for you, and my name was Suka then, he said, well, you just had a baby in January. So you have to do the art of childcare and cooking, of course. But the thing that I remember so well about that retreat is he compiled a list of ingredients that I was to get. And it was, maybe there were 6 meals also that I had to cook for. And I said to him, Sunim, this won't be enough for 6 meals. He said, you'll have to make it enough for 6 meals. And he said, you're only allowed to have 3 ingredients per meal. And being one who was the kind of a cook who put everything but the kitchen sink in my cooking just to make sure it was going to be seasoned correctly, 3 ingredients were really hard. I said, Sunum, that's not fair. He said, you try. So the one thing I remember was that one of the ingredients was soybean sprouts. You know, soybean sprouts, they're kind of bigger than mung bean sprouts. And he said, you can make a soup with these soybean sprouts. So I had 3 ingredients: soybean sprouts, water, and what do you think the next one was?
Salt.
Go ahead.
Salt.
You're right. But you just know that for every one of those sprouts, I took it and took off the little dry end. Often there's a little dry end. Washed them, carefully measured the water, started the boiling, and added salt very, very carefully, because this is all I had. So I had to do the best with not too many ingredients. It was a wonderful experience. And afterwards, at the end of the retreat, Sunim asked us each to write a report on our artist retreat. And I did it. So one day later, when we were back at the temple, he said, Sukha, where's your report? And there happened to be a piece of paper and a pencil. So all I did was I drew a soybean and handed it to him. So that's where I really learned kind of simplicity, and taking care of small things makes everything actually quite delicious. Okay, second small story. Third small story. Markham Street, across the street from the temple. My daughter is born, and one of the things that we would do is that on Saturday mornings, we would go across the street to the temple for interviews and a long sitting. Some of you may remember that. And so my husband, my husband was my husband then, would go over first, and he'd have the interview with Sunim. Then he'd come back and he'd take care of Garima while I would go over and have an interview. And usually, you know, she was quite a breastfeeder, so it felt like all the time my breasts were dripping when I was going around the kitchen, when I was going anywhere, because I was trying to have clothes with stains. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. So Sunim would, I would do my prostration, I would sit down, and Sunim would said to me on this occasion, Sukha, your practice is Garima. It was not Hanatul Set Netasu. It was not what is it, which is my practice, my formal practice now, but my daughter. And you know, she still is, I think, as long as we're both alive. I really appreciated him respecting being a mother. Yeah. Next story. Second child born at our temple at 46 Gwyn. Accidentally, we thought it would be in January. It was during the retreat in December, and on the 26th. And so right on the 26th, Sunim was in Mexico at that retreat. And so I phoned him to say the baby was born. We thought she wasn't going to be born until the middle of January. Can you give her a name? And he said, yeah. So I'll tell you after the retreat, I'll think about it. So after the retreat, I eagerly called him. Did you think of the name? You know, kind of really curious, like when we're taking the precepts, we're kind of curious what our Buddhist name was. So he said to me, Gomani. And I said, oh, what does it mean? He said, enough. Garima's name, Garima means middle way, the part in a woman's hair, also means ability to please oneself. So for good morning, I added good. And so her name became Good Enough. I think he just didn't, we had enough children. For me, Sunim was, making exception. A single mom, eventually, with 2 kids. I was really lucky to be able to train and to be of service as much as I was able to do. And it was because Sunim helped keep the kids around. All right, are you ready for the next one?
Yes.
Okay. This one took place at our farm a couple of years ago. Somehow said to me, because she was taking care of Sunim full time, and she said, you should come and visit Sunim here at the farm. So it happened that I could get a ride over, and I was able to be there for about a week. And I brought Sunim a watermelon, because that's one of his favorite fruits. And he wasn't talking too much. And I was sitting in my room one day, I was doing some different things on the computer, and all of a sudden at the door, which was right there, Sunim appeared. I had not heard him coming. He very slowly went around. He looked at me and he said, Haju, what are you doing? It was not that just friendly, what are you doing today, dear? No, it was in an ultimate sense, my dear, what are you doing? I think that he always had that question for me. What are you doing? I take it around to people myself sometimes. Yeah. Last story. This one, those Valentine books that you can get, and you just, if you push out, you get a Valentine, and the kids take them all to school, and they each have a Valentine box and all of that. So one year at Valentine's Day, Sunim had been in Lansing, where one of our students was starting a little sitting group. And his wife was an artist, and somehow she was making Valentines and gave Sunim a bunch of Valentines in case he had people he'd like to send Valentines to. And so he came back to Ann Arbor. Lansing's about an hour from Ann Arbor. After he'd spent a couple of days in Lansing with the students. And in an envelope he handed me was this Valentine. And so I took it out and then turned it over, and he'd written on the back, "Be my Valentine forever." In his writing. I would recognize Sunim's writing anywhere. And you'll see when you go to look at the things on the altar. How many of you received Valentine from Sunim like that? I figure you all did, really. Because he had this thing about, we're going to do this together. This is an important thing. And when we worked with it, we could really feel it. He asked you, learn to speak English. He asked many of us many things to step up in ways that were difficult. But you know what? Being all lovey-dovey, getting a Valentine like that wasn't really what it's about. It's about life straight. Life the way it comes out. Not this sort of in the movie kind of love story. And I really appreciated that about Sunim. That he was a real straight talker to me. A lot of stuff that he said to me and asked of me, I didn't want to do. I didn't like. In fact, he even asked me not to come to an annual meeting one year. And don't bring any of your students either, Haju. That was hard. That was really hard. So we just did our retreat and did our thing at home and picked up the next year with a group. Then, of course, after that was when he said, what are you doing, Haju? Okay. As you can imagine, there are just so many stories. That's why I think that book needs to be written. And I'd like to just end with one of the prayers which Sunim wrote. And he usually wrote a special piece of writing, a special Dharma message on New Year's Eve. And this is the one he wrote on December 2015. So maybe put your hands together in Hapchang of sincere heart with the hands flat, or open heart. Take some breaths slowly. Fully present. Buddhist prayer for all. I pray to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions that I would never be completely free from pain and suffering. Without pain and suffering, I will lose my friendship and solidarity with all beings. Without the friendship and solidarity of all beings, I would go wrong and be at a loss. I pray to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions that I would never be completely free from defilements and delusion. Freed from defilements and delusion, I would lose my purpose and cultivation of wisdom heart. My strength of purpose and wisdom heart confirm my membership in the afflicted community, where I share joy and happiness. I pray to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions that I would never be completely free from anxiety and distress. Freed from anxiety and distress, I could not share the struggles of common, ordinary people. Struggling daily, they weave their life strings together and go to pieces in joy and sorrow. How can I appreciate these mighty people without anxiety and distress? How miserable your life may be, your ordinary, however miserable your life may be, your ordinary everyday life is the way of Buddha. Whither is the seat of perfect enlightenment? Right here, where the cycle of life is turning.
during the retreat that we just had, we made these beads. And the 3 of the seeds are special seeds called Yeomju seeds. They're grown by our Dharma teacher, Tana, who lives in Los Angeles. And they're often seeds where the beads are made from Korea. They look like they have corn plants. And then they have all these, you'll see, you're each going to get one. Very special. So I want to tell you a story so when you read your bracelet, you'll remember. In Ann Arbor, after I came back from a pilgrimage with Sunim to Korea, I had collected some Yeomju seeds and I planted them in the back garden, along with some flower seeds too that I collected along the wayside of Korea. It's often from the University of Michigan that we get Korean students to visit, and sometimes they bring their parents. One day, a lady came with her son, and I drove, because I don't speak Korean, to somehow welcome them. And so the cosmos were growing, so I showed her the cosmos from the country that she was from. Oh, she liked that. And then I'll show her the Yeomju plants that are growing in the backyard, because they were going to seed. And so I took her and her son, and he translated, and I said, look, you know, and she just jumped up and down. She was so excited. And she started to talk very quickly to her son. And he translated to me. He said, oftentimes when people die and are buried, they are buried with their beads of Yeomju seeds around their neck. So, and she said, and this was a special part, that sometimes after 100 years, the Yeomju plant grows up from the graveyard. And then she said, because this Yeomju seed is so spunky, she said, translating through her son, and that's how it is with Buddha nature. Even if we are pierced through, our Buddha nature is spunky too. Dharma talk from a Korean lady, just passing it on.
I think we are at, I don't know, 1 year, about 2000.
Good afternoon. You started with a song, and once Sunim, in one of the trips that I had with Sunim in Korea, during those trips, we would go from temple to temple, monastery to monastery, climb mountains, and meet Zen Masters, monks, nuns. And that particular day, we were invited by a Zen Master to this very fancy restaurant. You know, it was run by an ex-monk. And the ambiance was extremely soft and very beautiful, like decorated, and everybody was sitting on the floor, a little pound of, you could hear the water trickling down. It was quite special and very soft. And we were having this kind of a dinner with the Zen Master had invited a few of his tigers to join us. And they always, when I was in those situations, those tigers would be paying really close attention to you, how you behave and everything. And so, right in the middle of the dinner, said, Anjali, sing your song. And I looked at him and I said, you must be kidding. I mean, this is not going to happen. And he said, you sing that song now, 100%. So I went, on a chanté les parisiennes, leur petit nez et leur chapeau, on a chanté les parisiennes. And the song goes on. I just like everybody in the restaurant, please, Sunim literally hiding in his cup. And everybody else was just like, Anyway, it was, Sunim could do that. And it was just like, he always put me in so many of the situations. It was quite fascinating. After Sunim passing, my mind became this gigantic kaleidoscope of images, of moments, of emotion, of memories. Many of them, I have to say, with sawdust, demolition derby, like a lot of renovation. When the first task Sunim asked me to do, when I first met him, the temple was on Green Avenue, in Parkdale, on the west end, and I was living quite far away on the east end. And he called me up and he said, Jacques, at the time, that was my name, he said, can you come and help me? I said, but of course, I will help you. Just ask. And so, I come to the temple, and he said, we bought those shelves from IKEA, and I wonder if you could help us. Could you build those shelves? It was on top of the stairs, And I said, but of course, I will do that for you. So I opened the box, and did the best I could, and I really just built up the shelves and put it up there. And I was quite happy and pretty proud of myself. I said, yeah, anytime. So I went home all the way after saying goodbye. 2 hours later, I got a phone call. Oh, Jack, do you mind coming to the temple? I want to show you something. I said, but of course, I will come. So I traveled again from the east end all the way down to the temple. When I arrived, I walked behind him, he took me to the top of the stairs, facing the shelf, And he went like this, he said, you see, look, here, look. And what it was one of the screws, which was not yet so flush with the wood. It just needed one more turn. So I said, okay. I got the flavor of my next 30-odd years with it was quite something, And Sujata, and of course, Waju told us about how frugal our life were always and remain, So another humble cooking story would be when we moved right here. Sunim, put me in charge of the kitchen. So I was, having to cook. And we were all working very hard. The place was a mess. When I was doing, wake up moktak, I had to make sure I don't walk in the nails, like on the floor. That would give another variation of the Great Compassion Dharani for sure. And so, so I said, okay, so I was cooking. And one day, obviously, we had nothing left. And me as a trained French chef, where butter is my god, I need, we always used to see, like to have a full fridge, Anyway, so I go to Sunim and I asked him, I said, Sunim, I need some money, I need to go shopping. No! Okay. We'll do with what, I'll find something. So, scrap, I look all over the place, and surely enough, managed to do, a meal, and, go on like this. The next day I said, okay, Sunim, I need to go shopping today. No! Sunim, I said, no! I said, no! Okay, so I went on like this, And it went like this for like 3 days. And so basically we were really at the bottom. I was really picking up everything, like we were having a spaghetti dinner with anything, seeds and all kinds. And there was this fellow Chibul who was doing all the electrical, thing, And so we were all working in this. Anyway, come to breakfast. Chibul got up and he said, "Enough! I can't eat any more of that food. I need some real food." So when he came back, remember we were on the scaffolding over here fixing, and the place was totally empty, and there was, of course, a big echo. And he opened the door, and just with a big sloppy, and it just goes. Life in the temple never ceases to amaze you, It's just like that. And Sunim really could attract the most wonderful characters. There is a book like this just for that. Sunim, it was also a magician. And I'm going to tell you a story which is directly connected to this temple. I was in Korea with him, and I was, it was just him and I. So actually, after people ask me, and say, tell me, how is it to really travel to Korea with Sunny? Oh, well, it's very simple. It's like Yomenjinjin, but the bell never rings. So anyway, we were like in the middle of our trip, and during those trips, Sunim did all kind of things, even bells, books, and moktak, and really all the time, every day, we accumulate a few things. And he always tried to find a place where he could store them. This time, he was inside an art gallery. This little art gallery, which was actually already quite small, had just enough little space, and so Sunim was piling it up to the top, until we had too much of it, and we had to actually move it to another town like Daegu in order to ship it here in Toronto or in Chicago or wherever it was going to go. So we had a lot of things. And that particular day, we were getting ready to actually go to Daegu in order to collect all of the things and, bring it out, and the train, but it was a lot of things. And I couldn't see how him and I alone could carry all of this, to this town. So I keep saying, Sunim, how are we going to do that? And so Sunim we arrived at this gallery where all the things were. There was a show going on, and there was a chair right in the middle. And Sunim was sitting right in. He was sitting right in, and a post-signing ladies give us some clothes. Anyway, I'll go down. I'll tell you that later. But anyway, and he sat on that chair, and he said nothing. So I said, okay. And so I go around the gallery to see the show, go around twice like this for first hour, and then I come back after an hour and I say, Sunim, are we going to go? How are we going to do that? No response, no words. Then 2 hours later, Sunim, what are we going to do? Not a word from him. And it was about at least 3 hours later. There's this young Caucasian fellow that come in inside the gallery and looking at the works, like this and that. And then it came right at my level when I was looking also at an artwork. That's the only thing I had to do. And he looks at me quite strangely, looking at this big guy, wearing monk's clothes. And he asked me, he said, what are you doing here? I say, well, I'm with my teacher, the Korean Zen Master, Samu Sunim. He said, really? Is this a real thing? I said, oh yeah, it's a real thing. And what are you doing here in Korea? I said, well, we're on pilgrimage. We're going from place, temple to temple, monastery to monastery. And he looked at me and he said, can I come? And I said, what? I'm just like this, the guy walked up. And I say, well, you know what, I'm going to ask my teacher. So I go to Sunim and I say, hey, Sunim, someone just asked me if you could come with us. And he said, he looks at me and he said, tell him to shave his head. I said, okay, I'll ask him. So I go back to the fellow, I say, you're going to have to shave your head. Okay. Then Sunim said, so I go to Sunim and he said, okay, let's go now. And off we go. This day remained a mystery for me. I mean, by that, it was just so typical. I mean, it says a lot about Sunim. And so I put this little book together, the title Tears of Gratitude. And every time I went to Korea with Sunim, climbing mountains, taking the paths leading to monasteries and temples, walking along the rivers, bamboo groves, pine trees, rocks, big blue skies, entering the gates of the temples and nurseries, waking up to the sound of the bells and drums, joining shiny heads early in the morning, lit by the candle lights. Just so beautiful. Such a privilege. And every time I came, I was always wondering, why would you want me to come with you? Because I would always come. You know how we draw the line, how far we're willing to go, And Sunim would always show you the way beyond that line, because he would give you the Dharma to go forward. And I remember when I went to Korea, I always had a bag full of those lines with me, carrying on. And amazingly, he never failed to show me the way beyond those lines. Tears of gratitude. Anyway. It's kind of a kaleidoscope. We all have that kaleidoscope in ourselves with all the stories we all have. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you for your patience. Although it's endless stories. But, I came in 1985, March, to Toronto, to Wynn Avenue. And after that was after a retreat in 1984, and was very inspired by Sunim and also the group that came that December, and also taking a look at Spring Wind, the stories and all that, the whole thing. So we decided to come 3 months. So that became 8 years and a half. Sunim has such a different angle. It was such a round character and very rich, as you already have heard. So he taught in many different ways. While we were in the table, sometimes in casual situations, sometimes in a very friendly way, jokeful way, sometimes in a very fierce way, very often. So anyway, Uh, I remember we were sitting at the table having breakfast or something, and he would ask me some things or some other person. So that time, often I used the word maybe, and he would ask me very straightforward things, and I would always say, well, maybe this, maybe that. So at some point he said, okay, I will start you calling maybe. You couldn't, being his present, he couldn't come up with this kind of thing, maybe. You just have to learn to be straightforward or just go. So, anyway. After some months, he asked me, well, Don, why are you so timid? Why are you so shy? And I said, I don't know. Okay, every morning you have to do an exercise. So I'm sharing this therapy with you. So see if you find that you can use it. So he showed me, okay, every morning you have to wake up and do this. Whoop! I tried a couple of times. It didn't feel natural. And then ending laughing. So after some months, Sujata asked me, are you doing Sunim's practice? No. She just said, really, she said seriously, not harshly, but she said, too bad, Don. Frosty. I said to myself, well, okay, I'm doing meditation, prostrations, and working, so it's enough, right? I'm not going to do this silly, ridiculous practice. So I just forgot it. Time went by. I don't know how long it took without doing any practice, any of this kind of stuff, but probably years. And when I was back in Mexico, well, of course I knew this problem, but sometimes there were very ordinary situations. For example, say that the locksmith came and did some job. So there was something that I was not satisfied, but I wouldn't say. So afterwards I said, why? I have all the right to ask to do the proper thing. So somehow this practice came back. You see, no, I have to get this right. So I started doing the practice. So for about, I don't know, maybe 3 months or something. And I actually got to enjoy it. Imagine. So, just a little taste.
Will you do it again?
I can. I don't think you should. Also, you must be a little impatient. But anyway, I don't know. As it has been said, it really had this energy of a tiger. But as the Zen saying goes, with one hand slap, with the other encourage. So always this combination, and you never know when it was going to follow one or the other, because really it was leading with a wonderful friend, but also, I wouldn't say but, and also a fierce tiger. Actually, this morning before our service, it was very sunny, and just looking at the clouds, I enjoy very much a day like this, like in the morning, with it so shiny, so clear, and just looking at the cloud and feeling, of course, after ending retreat, this clarity, this simplicity, this essence is what this is about. Why I'm here? Why was so many years with Sunim? I guess because he always, with his so many different ways. Sometimes, of course, sometimes I will get very upset with things he did, but there was always this return to this essence through his presence, through our practice. Actually, in the 40th anniversary, which happened it was in Toronto. As today, we shared so many stories, maybe more. There was even a photo exhibition. So towards the end, actually, Sunim just, I don't remember exactly, maybe he even interrupted one of us. And he said, okay, enough, let's come here. So we all came close to the altar, there was this platform, and sat. So much silence. Nothing else to say. We return to our essence. Of course, he didn't say anything more about it, but it just came to me. It's a wonderful way of ending. It's silent. Actually, if you go downstairs, in the middle of the stairs, there's something very, something you wrote about this. This returning to the essential. I'm close to finishing. Just actually, I want to mention something. Sometime in New York, which actually was a very difficult period for him, starting the New York Temple. It was a lonely years, and also had to deal with so much stuff in Manhattan. Everything is so difficult in Manhattan. Actually, it was quite an accomplishment to get for it to happen. So sometimes he I don't know if he was then, but he once said, I would like to be Henja again. Henja is novice. I want to serve a teacher. At that time, actually, it was before, because Venerable UNG, which was his senior, he said, I would like to serve Venerable UNG or sometimes some teacher. Just beginner's mind. What can I say? Maybe come this one of many experiences in the New York Temple. I was doing that time a lot of demolition, which somehow connects with this exercise of being too timid, I guess. We had this big room where now is the library, and there were 9 panels about this wide and 3 meters tall of mirror. So they had to be taken away. So how am I going to do it? Well, different ideas. I look even in the web. These days, you can learn so many things. watching videos in how to take down big mirrors. So after, I'm not going to describe it. In the end, what was obvious, we have to break them. Well, how am I going to break this complete wall of mirrors? So anyway, I figured out, put this old rock in the bottom, dress well, gloves, long sleeves, goggles, boots. Okay, so climb on a stair, on a ladder, and then with the hammer. Boom! Nothing happened. Boom! Nothing happens. Okay, no, third attempt, nothing happens. Okay. Of course, I was, had no experience with breaking glass or mirror. Don't have the feeling of how the material behaves. I'm thinking that all these pieces is gonna fly all over. So of course, okay, I went down the ladder and then taking the hammer. Nothing happened. Okay, no, okay. So I went to the tool room for a sledgehammer. Okay. Anyway, let's go for it. There was nothing would happen.
So we are going to getting a little late. We are going to close by reciting together song of meditation. It's written by Sunim at the temple beside every Wednesday evening. So this is summary of meditation practice he left for us to carry on. So it's in the program. You sing some voice with the bell. If you know it by heart, you can hop down and close your eyes. you may cry without bitterness, laugh like the morning sun. Like the rain, are you related on your mind? So your daily activities. Tears flow from skyscrapers, woodland rise to dance, and flowers bloom on highway signs. Please now, Shiva reminds you, enlightenment is instantly present in the mind of the beginner. Birth, death, and nirvana are always in harmony. Seeking or attaining enlightenment is the defeat of meditation practice. If such thoughts occur, wake up from ignorance, frightened as swallowing poison. Each time you sit, you are a new beginner. The presence of awakened heart in the first mind is vast and infinite. There is no birth, no death, and no nirvana. Prepare to surrender yourself if you have obstacles. Bow and perform prostrations if you have doubts. Do constant practice, fresh in this moment, if you lose the beginner's mind. Here is a song for your everyday Dharma life. Meditation is knowing yourself. Knowing yourself is setting yourself free from delusions. Setting yourself free from delusions is becoming one with what is. Becoming one with what is enjoying formless life every day. Enjoying formless life is seeing yourself everywhere in happiness and sorrow. Serve all beings as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Protect water, soil, and clean air. Praise the way of Buddha. In the song of meditation, what's called unknowing mind, I think we can have a taste of this unknown mind by listening to stories from our senior teachers, kind of saying, okay, and often Sunim made us shout to overcome our small self. Shouting was very important practice here at the temple. So those who have taken precept might remember at the very end of the ceremony. Do you remember what we do? So we call it 3 wows. We wow, 3 wows. So 3 qualities we practice as a Buddhist. So we wow the word. Wow. So 3 wows are, in the Buddhist, we can say we are a bunch of happy people.
Happy people!
No, first one is not happy people, energetic people. And then we are a bunch of happy people. The last, we are a bunch of harmful people. So, wow. 100% use your voice, you're going to shout. Okay, so that's our promise for Sunim to carry on our Dharma. Okay, so 3 vowels, we can add more vowels, but minimum 3. So Sunim, we are a bunch of energetic people. Wow! Sunim, we are a bunch of happy people. Sunim, we are a bunch of helpful people. Thank you, Sunim. So, the reception downstairs, I can stay on, and also you can maybe visit you also. I just collected a few, items, personal items of Sunim, mainly Sunim like writings in Korean and English. And also, we have a gift for you. So 1, right? So 3, Sunim's name is Samu, 3 friends. So it's 3, the Yulmu, and the Yulmu gift in Korean, Yulmu ship. So it's represents the Sunim. So you can just remember Sunim teachings. And then another gift is Sunim wrote home. So this is not the entire collection of Sunim's poems, just from 2010 to 2017. Sunim said at that time he was going between New York City and Toronto on megabus, 12 hours. So he said, 12 hours, how can I use it? So writing poems. So we have about 14 poems with the 4 taken by Dolly on their pilgrimage in Korea. So very personal. You can see things like things heart and mind. So you can just grab in the bookstore. I think Hannah and someone else will be there for her to. You can take multiple copies if you have someone who knows to give to. Thank you so much for your presence. Get some pictures.